What is going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to be going through my updated top 25 after week 3 of the 2024 college football season. And my rankings are more of a power ranking. I basically rank these teams off of how good I think they would play against each other if they played on a neutral site field tomorrow. So most of the time, I don't put group of 5 teams in my top 25. But at number 25, I actually do have Boise State. Boise State is averaging 45 points a game right now, and they have a beast at running back in Ashton Jeanty. A lot of people were expecting Boise State to be more of a defensive team, but that offense has been rolling this season. And if they can get that defense to be better, this is going to be a very good Boise State team. They played Oregon really close. They scored 56 points on Georgia Southern. And I like what I have seen from this Boise State team so far. So I do have Boise State at number 25 in my top 25. And at number 24, I have Syracuse. I'm really not sure if Syracuse is actually a top 25 team. I don't know how good Georgia Tech is, but Syracuse did beat Georgia Tech, and that was a solid win for them. Syracuse has looked really good, and their quarterback Kyle McCord is putting up numbers. The Syracuse team is better than I originally expected. They have some decent skill position players. They have a decent running back in LaQuint Allen, and the defense also has room to grow. I like Syracuse in my top 25, and I have them at number 24. And at number 23, I have UCF. I really think this UCF team is a legit sleeper to win the Big 12. They got a nice win over TCU last week, and I'm actually pretty high on TCU. I think they will be a solid team this year. UCF is also averaging 375 rushing yards a game, up there with Tennessee right behind Army. So right now they are second in the country for rushing yards. They are averaging the most amount of points per game in the Big 12. This offense is extremely high-powered. And they also have a quarterback who I believe is an upgrade from last year in KJ Jefferson. Gus Malzahn is a great head coach, and the defense should continue to improve. I really like this UCF team, and do not sleep on this team. They can end up making the Big 12 championship this year. At number 22, I have Michigan, and I continue to drop this team more and more every week, and they could easily end up outside of my top 25. But because how good that defense is, I do still have them in my top 25, and I can't overreact too much. I don't want to be too unrealistic and rank this team outside of the top 25 yet. Their only losses to Texas, but I'm expecting them to lose to USC by at least a touchdown this week. And if that ends up happening, I might drop Michigan out of my top 25 because I could say I've seen enough. I'm really not high on this Michigan team. They have taken a step back at the line of scrimmage, and they have horrible quarterback play. And their defense might not even be as good as people think it is. They are in the bottom 5 of the Big Ten right now for points per game given up, and the bottom 5 for yards per game given up. They really lost a lot, and I can only put Michigan at number 22. Number 21, I have Iowa State. They have that solid win over Iowa on the road. They had to come back from behind and score points on a really good Iowa defense, and they won the game. They're also only allowing 11 points a game right now, and I think this team is good enough to be considered a top 25 team this early in the season. They return a bunch of production from last season, and even with a sluggish performance in Week 1 against North Dakota, they managed to bounce back and beat Iowa, and I only think this team is going to get better from here on out, and they could be a contender to make the Big 12 championship game, because the Big 12 is absolutely wide open. So I do have Iowa State at number 21 for now. And at number 20, I have Notre Dame. I really can't rank this team higher. Maybe I'm still overreacting to that terrible loss to Northern Illinois. And I can't say I'm confident that Notre Dame would beat the 19 teams ahead of them on a neutral site field if they played tomorrow, because Notre Dame could easily not show up to play like they did against Northern Illinois. It's really hard to say, but I do think Notre Dame still has a shot to make the playoffs because they have an easy schedule. They still have games against USC, Georgia Tech, and Louisville, but if they can win out, they have a shot to make the playoffs. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but they did show promise last week with a big win over Purdue. But the offensive issues against Northern Illinois was very concerning, and their offense has some issues. Their run game showed up last week against Purdue. They ran for over 300 yards, but can they continue that momentum? I really don't know, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. I have them at number 20 for now. At number 19, I have Oklahoma. Some people might think I have them a bit too low. Their defense should be pretty good, but they have really struggled to score points this year against teams like Tulane and Houston. They did pick it up in the fourth quarter against Tulane, but they were struggling all game. And I know they have some injuries and they will have some guys back, so they could potentially get better, but I don't expect them to be that competitive with Tennessee this week. And I don't think they would beat the 18 teams above them tomorrow if they played on a neutral site field. I really have questions with this Oklahoma team. They have some great weapons at wide receiver, but their offensive line has been atrocious, and their quarterback hasn't lived up to the expectation. Oklahoma could be higher on my top 25 later in the season, but I only have them at number 19 for now. At number 18, I have Clemson. I've really talked down on this Clemson team a lot. I'm not too high on the offense, but I do think they are a top 20 team and they have a realistic shot to make the ACC championship game with how down the ACC is. And I know they have a top 15, top 10 defense in college football that is really good. They managed to score 66 points against App State. I'm really not going to overreact to that too much. They kind of ran up the score. But still, that was a very good win. And they should be able to beat NC State pretty comfortably this week. I had NC State beating Clemson in the offseason, but NC State is not as good as I expected them to be. And that's just going to be another win for Clemson on this season. And NC State was supposed to be one of the tougher teams on their schedule. I think Clemson is a good enough team to be considered the number 18 team in the country, but I still think they are a bit overrated. And at number 17, right ahead of Clemson, I have Louisville. It's really Miami at the top of the ACC for who's certainly going to win the ACC. But then I would say Louisville and Clemson have a realistic shot to give Miami a run for their money. And I really like what I have seen from this Louisville offense. I think they are a better all-around team than Clemson is. And I know it's still early in the season and they haven't played anybody, but they were a really good defense last season. But they struggled to move the ball offensively against good competition. But right now, Louisville is near the top of the ACC for every statistic offensively. I think this could be a year that Louisville struck gold in the portal. This is a really good Louisville team in my opinion, and I do have them at number 17. A team that I might have ranked a little bit too high is the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and I have them at number 16. I get it, it's still early in the season, and Nebraska is always an underperforming team, but this is a completely different team, and I am certain about that. Matt Rhule has made a big difference everywhere he has gone, and this Nebraska team has the great tools to be a great football team. They have a top 15 defense, they have a very experienced offensive line, they are 4 deep at running back, they have a 5-star true freshman quarterback in Dylan Raiola. This team is really good, and I think they will be a 10-win team this year because of the easy schedule. I'm really buying into the hype train with this Nebraska team. I really think they are a legit team. We know what to expect from the defense, but the offense has taken a big step forward. Their defense is going to keep them in games with just about every team, but their offense should give them enough production to win a lot of games this year. So I do have Nebraska at number 16. And don't sleep on Nebraska, they could be a sneaky team to make the college football playoff. I've seen people predicting Iowa to make the college football playoff this offseason, but I knew that was going to be a complete joke. Iowa has no offense, but if you're looking at a sleeper in the Big Ten to make the college football playoff, it is not Iowa, it is Nebraska, because they have a really good all-around team, and they have the head coach. At number 15, I have Utah. I dropped this Utah team a bit because they haven't looked that good without Cam Rising. I still think this Utah team is a bit questionable. Their secondary isn't as good as people think it is. And Cam Rising is really the heart and soul of this team, and a lot relies on him to play his best football. The Big 12 is wide open, but Utah is not my favorite to win the Big 12. I just don't think they will be consistent enough and be a good enough team. But regardless, when Cam Rising is playing, this is a really good football team, and I do have them at number 15. At number 14, I have Oklahoma State. Similar to Utah, they have some inconsistency issues and more inconsistency issues. Their defense just completely underperforms sometimes, and Alan Bowman can struggle at the quarterback position a lot. Oklahoma State also has a shot to win the Big 12, but they aren't my favorite. I'll get to my favorite in a minute. But I do have Oklahoma State at number 14. At number 13, I have LSU. And I could totally have LSU ranked a little bit too high, but I think this is a pretty good football team. I think they are a lot more well-balanced. And they managed to come back from behind and beat a pretty solid South Carolina team. A lot of people might overreact and say LSU isn't that good because they struggled against South Carolina. But South Carolina had the game day appearance and they had that game at home. I knew South Carolina was going to keep that game close, but LSU overcame the adversity and won that game. And I really think that was a good win, better than people think it was for LSU. And they are only going to continue to get better this year, and I think the defense has taken a step forward. So I do have LSU at number 13. At number 12, my favorite in the Big 12 right now is Kansas State. I know I can trust this Kansas State defense, and I can trust Chris Klieman as a head coach. The defense is always one of the top defenses in the Big 12. But I really like what they have in the running game with guys like Avery Johnson, DJ Giddens, and Dylan Edwards. Avery Johnson is starting to be the quarterback we expected him to be. He had a good showing against Arizona, and he is only going to get better. I like what I saw from this Kansas State team against Arizona, and I do think this is a really good Kansas State team. I think I can trust Kansas State to be the most consistent team in the Big 12, and they are my favorite right now, so I do have them at number 12. On number 11, I have USC. And similar to LSU, we still have to learn a lot more about this USC team. Has their defense really taken a step forward? I think it's almost certain their defense has taken a step forward. There's no way they would have shut out a team like Utah State last year. But is their defense good enough to make them a contender in the Big Ten? I absolutely don't know. And I have some questions with the offense too because they have lost a lot. But on the other hand, we know what to expect from Lincoln Riley-led offenses. I really think USC is a good football team, and we'll learn more about them when they play on the road against Michigan this week. But for now, I'm going to rank them at number 11. At number 10, I have Missouri. I think Missouri is a bit overranked, and they could end up lower in this ranking. They lost their defensive coordinator and a bunch of defensive production, and I really don't know if this team is as good as people expect them to be. They did come back from behind and beat Boston College, but they had no business being down against Boston College by 2 touchdowns. Boston College will probably be a team that makes a bowl game, but I don't think Boston College is that great of a team. And Missouri really struggled against Boston College. So I did drop them down a little bit to number 10. And at number 9, I have Penn State. You could totally swap Penn State and Missouri, but I think I could just trust what this Penn State team has back from last year more than I can Missouri. And I know they had that struggling game against Bowling Green, but they also had a good win in Week 1 against West Virginia. And I don't think they're going to play as bad as they did against Bowling Green all year, and I'm certain about that. This is a top 10 defense in the country, and I think most people can agree with that. And despite the struggle against Bowling Green, we have seen some offensive explosiveness from this team. I still don't know if that offense is going to do enough to get them to win 11 or 12 games and make the Big Ten championship game, but I would definitely trust them more than Missouri, and that's why I have Penn State ranked ahead of Missouri now. So I have Penn State at number 9. At number 8, I do have the Oregon Ducks. We finally seen a great performance from Oregon last week when they played Oregon State. They played a nearly perfect game on offense, and their secondary looks much improved from last year. The concerns are in the run defense because they continue to give up a bunch of rushing yards. But all around, I think this is a really good Oregon team, and they are only going to get better. It has been a pattern with Oregon. They don't play their best football at the start of the year, but they are playing their best football by the end of the year. Oregon showed a lot of growth last season under Dan Lanning, and they will show more growth this season. And I really think this team is too talented to rank them any lower. So I do have Oregon at number 8, and they could end up higher on this ranking later in the season. At number 7, I have Miami. Miami looks like one of the best teams in college football, albeit they haven't really played anybody. And Florida might just be a very bad team, one of the worst Power 4 teams possibly. So maybe that win wasn't as impressive as we thought it was, but Miami could have easily beat Florida State by more. But Miami is putting up numbers, and they are nearly top of the country in a lot of statistics. I really think this is a good Miami team that is loaded from top to bottom, and I do have them at number 7. At number 6, I have Alabama. I think there could be a case to rank them higher, but the teams ahead of them I think are really, really good. So I do only have Alabama at number 6. But I think we saw great things from that win against Wisconsin. Albeit, I don't think Wisconsin is that good. They might not even make a bowl game this year. But Jalen Milroe is thriving in Kalen DeBoer's system, and this Alabama offense is rolling. And I've also liked what I've seen from the defense so far. This is a really good Alabama team, and I do have them at number 6. But at number 5, I have Tennessee ahead of them, and I think you can make a case to rank Tennessee even higher. This team right now has a top 2 scoring offense and a top 2 scoring defense. Tennessee is playing out of their mind, and their rushing game is extremely dominant. But they really haven't played anybody yet, so I am only ranking them at number 5. I know NC State was a pretty solid win. They blew out NC State 51-10, but NC State has not looked that great this season either. But regardless, I think this Tennessee team has everything they need to be a national title contender. They have the quarterback, they have the skill position players, and more importantly, they have a dominant run game and a very good front 7. We'll see how they do when they play better competition in the Oklahoma Sooners this weekend on the road, but I'm expecting Tennessee to win that game by at least 2 scores. At number 4, I have Ole Miss. Similar to Tennessee, they haven't played anybody, but similar to Tennessee, Ole Miss is near the top of the country in offense and defense. They are putting up numbers, and Jackson Dart leads the country in passing yards, and his completion percentage is very high in the 80s. I really think this was a good Ole Miss team that could compete with just about anybody in the country last year, but I think the guys they added in the front 7 defensively are going to help them compete with the most elite teams in the country, which they weren't able to do last season. If there was a year for Ole Miss to make a run for the national championship, it would be this year. And I'm really high on this Ole Miss team, and I do have them at number 4 for now. Number 3, I have Ohio State. Ohio State hasn't played anybody, but their defense is extremely dominant right now, and they are also getting good production from the offense. Jeremiah Smith is one of the best true freshmen we have seen in a long time, and he is crazy at the wide receiver position. This Ohio State team is extremely loaded from top to bottom, and I cannot rank them any lower, so I have them at number 3. And at number 2, I do have Georgia. I did drop them below Texas. Georgia had that struggling performance against Kentucky, and their offense still has showed some concerning things. But I trust Kirby Smart, and I'm still going to rank Georgia very high at number 2. We've seen this in the past before. Georgia will struggle against bad teams, but then they can go on and win a national championship. So nobody sell their Georgia stock yet. This is going to be a very good football team, and they are loaded. But at number 1, I do have Texas. I really like what I have seen from this Texas team, and I think I can value that Texas win over Michigan more than I can that Georgia win over Clemson. Texas beat Michigan on the road, and Georgia basically beat Clemson with home field advantage. Texas also had a very dominant shutout win over Colorado State, which surprised me. We know what to expect from that Texas offense, but that Texas defense has really impressed me. I think the secondary has taken a big step forward, and I'm not convinced that Georgia would beat Texas on a neutral site field if they played tomorrow. I could rank Georgia even lower, but I try to be a little realistic and not overreact too much, so I only dropped Georgia to number 2. But at number 1, I think Texas looks like the best team in the country right now. But anyways, that is going to do it for my Week 4 Top 25 rankings. You guys let me know what your Top 25 rankings would look like down in the comments below. But let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you'll love this channel, because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing, and also consider checking out my socials down in the description below. But that is going to do it, guys, and peace out.